Pay it. Why do you need money if you take the bus? Silas didn't even look up from his steak as he tossed the crumpled invoice onto my dinner plate. $3,200. For a bumper replacement on my cousin Victoria's Mercedes. Providing your sister with a respectable image is the price you pay for us raising you, he said, cutting his meat. Don't make me ask twice. Across the table, Victoria smirked, sipping her wine like she was waiting for a show. She expected me to beg. She expected me to cry about how unfair it was. Instead, I picked up my phone. I opened my banking app and typed in the exact amount. But in the memo line, I didn't write car repair. I wrote 2 words, severance fee. I hit send. They thought I was paying a bill. They didn't realize I was buying my freedom. Most people have one life. I had 2. And for 10 years, I kept them so far apart that I sometimes forgot which one was real. To the world outside my family, I wasn't the broke, pathetic niece who took the bus because she couldn't afford a car. I was the founder and CEO of Skylift, a medical aviation network valued at $1.5 million. I didn't just coordinate logistics. I managed a fleet of helicopters that transported donor organs through hurricanes and airlifted trauma victims from mountain peaks. I spent my days negotiating contracts with hospital networks and managing pilots who had flown in combat zones. I commanded respect in boardrooms where men twice my age stopped talking when I walked in. But the moment I stepped off that bus and walked into Silas and Marion's house, I shrank. I became the charity case. The burden. The girl who should be grateful they didn't leave her on the street when her parents died. I lived in a studio apartment with a radiator that hissed like a dying cat and a view of a brick wall. I ate instant noodles 5 nights a week. I shopped at thrift stores, not because it was trendy, but because every extra dollar I made went into a separate account that I transferred to them. I told myself it was gratitude. I told myself I was paying them back for taking me in when I was 18. That was the start of the con. I was 18, grieving, and terrified. My parents had just died in a car accident, leaving me alone with a confusing estate and a heart that felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. Silas and Marion sat me down at that same dining room table. They pushed a document toward me. A power of attorney. We'll handle the heavy lifting, Juliet, Marion had said, squeezing my hand with a warmth that felt like a lifeline back then. You just focus on healing. We'll manage the estate, pay the bills, and keep everything safe for you. I signed it. I signed away my financial autonomy because I thought they were saving me. I didn't know I was handing them the keys to my future. Over the next decade, that power of attorney became a leash. They told me the estate was smaller than expected. They told me the money was tied up, that there were debts I didn't know about. They created a narrative where I was destitute. And they were the saints keeping me afloat, and I believed them. I believed them so much that when I started Skylift and began making real money, I felt guilty. I felt like I owed them for those hard years they spent supporting me. So I kept my success a secret. I played the role they wrote for me. While I was coordinating life-saving flights, Victoria was living the life I was paying for. That Mercedes I just paid to fix? I bought it. Well, technically, Silas bought it using funds he claimed were for household emergencies. Victoria drove it to parties while I took the bus to meetings. She posted photos of her designer bags while I taped up the soles of my work shoes. There was a night last winter that broke me, though I didn't admit it until now. I was up at 3 a.m, coordinating an emergency transport for a pediatric heart transplant. The weather was brutal, 0 visibility, and I was on the line with the pilot, sweating, praying, using every ounce of my skill to get that kid to the hospital safely. When the bird finally touched down and the team rushed the cooler into the ER, I slumped in my chair, exhausted but triumphant. We saved a life. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Victoria. She wasn't calling to ask how I was. She was crying hysterically because she'd chipped a nail before a date and needed $40 for an emergency manicure. She demanded I Venmo her immediately. I did it. I sent the money. I sat there in the dark, the adrenaline of saving a child fading into the cold reality of my existence. I was a giant in my world, but to them, I was just an invisible ATM, and the machine was finally out of cash. If there was a moment that killed the last shred of my loyalty, it wasn't the dinner. It was the storm 3 weeks prior. It was a Tuesday, and the weather radar looked like a bruised peach, purple and black swirling over the Atlantic. I was in the command center, staring at 3 monitors. We had a liver in transit from Boston to a recipient in Philadelphia, and the window was closing fast. My pilot was good, but the headwinds were pushing 60 knots. I was on the headset, calculating fuel burn and alternate landing zones, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Every minute mattered. If we missed the window, the organ died. If the organ died, the patient died. That was when my personal phone started buzzing. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. 15 times in 4 minutes. My stomach dropped. I thought someone had died. I thought there was a fire. I handed the headset to my second-in-command, stepped into the hallway, and answered with my breath caught in my throat. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Is everyone okay? Juliet?" Finally. Aunt Marian's voice wasn't panicked. It was annoyed. "I've been calling for 10 minutes. Victoria needs to book her ticket for the Young Entrepreneurs Gala tonight, and her card was declined. It's $500. Send it over." I stared at the wall, the adrenaline from the life-or-death situation in the other room crashing into the sheer absurdity of this request. "Marian," I said, my voice shaking. "I am in the middle of a crisis. I am coordinating a medical transport in a hurricane. Is anyone hurt?" "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "This gala is important for Victoria's networking. She needs to be seen. Just transfer the money, Juliet. It takes 5 seconds." The word hung there. I had never said it before, not like that. "Excuse me?" Marian's tone shifted from annoyance to ice. "After everything we've done for you? We took you in when you were a grieving orphan. We gave you a home, and now you're going to be selfish over $500? You are ungrateful, Juliet. You have always been ungrateful." I hung up. I walked back into the command center, put my headset on, and guided my pilot to a safe landing in Philly. The liver made it. The patient lived. But as the cheers went up around me, I didn't feel the usual rush. I felt cold. That call was the moment I finally understood the trap I was in. You see, cruelty isn't always a slap in the face. Sometimes, it's a slow-acting poison. If you are fed small doses of it every single day from the time you are a child, you don't taste the bitterness anymore. You start to think that's just what love tastes like. You start to believe that your only value is your utility. I thought if I just paid enough bills, if I just fixed enough problems, eventually they would look at me and say, "We love you." But they didn't love me. They loved what I provided. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a utility bill that paid itself. I sat in my office long after the staff had gone home. The silence was heavy. I pulled up my laptop. For years, I had avoided looking too closely at the estate accounts, trusting the reports Silas sent me. I trusted them because they were family. But families don't demand gala tickets while you're saving lives. I logged into my banking portal. It was time to see exactly how much this love had cost me. The next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of my bank. I wasn't there to investigate my family, at least. Not yet. I was there for business. Skylift was expanding, and I needed liquid capital to put a down payment on 2 new birds. My parents had left me an accumulated insurance fund, a conservative nest egg that was supposed to mature when I turned 30. I hadn't touched it in a decade, letting it compound quietly in the background. I sat across from the branch manager, a polite man named Mr. Henderson. I slid my ID across the desk. "I'd like to liquidate the Henderson Trust account," I said. "Transfer the full balance to my business operating account." He typed for a moment, frowned, and then typed again. The silence stretched. He turned his monitor slightly away from me. "Miss Juliet," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I can certainly close the account, but the transfer amount would be negligible." "Negligible?" "It should be over $80,000. The current balance is $12.42. The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. I haven't touched it. There have been consistent monthly withdrawals for the last 7 years, he said, turning the screen so I could see. Listed as emergency medical expenses and caregiver stipends. The statements were mailed to 42 Oak Street. 42 Oak Street. Silas and Marian's address. I stared at the screen. The numbers blurred into a sickening pattern. 500 here. 2,000 there. A massive $10,000 withdrawal 3 years ago, the exact week Victoria went to Europe for her gap year. They hadn't just been leeching off my income. They had cannibalized my inheritance. They used the power of attorney I signed when I was a grieving teenager to redirect my mail and drain my future, all while looking me in the eye and asking for gas money. $85,000. Stolen. I didn't yell at the manager. I thanked him, asked for a full printout of the transaction history, and walked out. The air outside was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt a strange, icy clarity. I could have gone to the police right then. I could have had them arrested. But prison was too easy. They needed to lose what they valued most. Their image. I drove straight to the office of my corporate attorney, Marcus. He's a shark in a 3-piece suit. The kind of lawyer you hire when you want to bury someone, not just sue them. They stole 85 grand, I told him, tossing the bank printout onto his mahogany desk. But I don't just want the money back, Marcus. I want to own them. Marcus reviewed the file, his eyebrows raising. The power of attorney makes it messy criminally, but civilly? We can destroy them. However, I did some digging while you were on your way over. Your cousin Victoria is trying to buy a villa in the Heights. Listing price is 1.2 million. She has no income, I said. No bank will touch her. Exactly. She's been blacklisted by every major lender. But Silas is desperate to get her into that house to keep up appearances. He's looking for private lending. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Activate Shadow Corp. Shadow Corp was a shell company I used for acquiring aircraft anonymously so competitors wouldn't hike the prices. It was legitimate, well-funded, and completely opaque. Draft a loan offer, I instructed. A no-doc private mortgage. High interest. Predatory terms. The kind that looks like a lifeline to desperate people. But include an acceleration clause. If any financial information provided during the application is found to be false, say, the source of the down payment, the loan defaults immediately, and the lender seizes all collateral. And the collateral? Marcus asked. Their current house. The Mercedes. Everything they have. Silas took the bait 2 days later. He didn't even read the fine print. He just saw a pile of money that would let him play the big shot for his daughter. He thought he was outsmarting a faceless corporation. He didn't realize the CEO was the girl he'd forced to take the bus. The closing was scheduled for 2 p.m. at a high-rise notary office downtown. I wasn't in the room when they arrived, not yet, but I had a live feed from my security team, and I knew exactly what the scene looked like. Victoria treated the occasion like a coronation. She swept into the lobby wearing an all-white designer power suit that probably cost more than my first car. She had a stylist trailing her to touch up her hair and a phone in her hand, already live streaming to her 2,000 followers. She wasn't just buying a house. She was performing success. She was showing the world that she had won. That she was the heiress she always pretended to be. Silas and Marion walked in behind her. Chests puffed out. They looked like they owned the building. They had no idea they were walking into a slaughterhouse. They were escorted into the main conference room, a glass box floating 40 stories above the city. My lawyer, acting as the representative for Shadow Corp, sat at the head of the table. He pushed a stack of documents toward them. This was the beauty of the no-doc private loan. It's expensive, it's risky, and it's designed for people who can't prove they have legitimate income. Silas signed the loan agreement with a flourish, barely glancing at the interest rate. He was arrogant. He thought he was playing the system. I could almost hear his internal monologue. We'll flip the old house, pay off this predatory loan in a month, and live in the villa rent-free. He thought Shadow Corp was just some faceless, greedy entity that didn't care where the money came from. He was about to be very wrong. Then came the kill shot. My lawyer slid a single sheet of paper across the polished mahogany. It was a standard federal form known as a gift letter. In real estate, when you put down a large cash down payment, like, say, $85,000, the government wants to know where it came from. To prevent money laundering, you have to certify the source. If it's a gift, you say it's a gift. If it's savings, you say it's savings. But if you stole it, there is no box for that. We just need to certify the source of the down payment funds for the file, my lawyer said. His voice bored and professional. Standard procedure. Silas didn't hesitate. He didn't sweat. He picked up his Mont Blanc pen and checked the box for personal savings. He signed his name at the bottom, swearing under penalty of perjury that the money was his, legally obtained, and not a loan. He looked at Marion and winked. That wink sealed his fate. He thought he was just fudging paperwork. He didn't realize that signature turned it into federal mortgage fraud, lying about where the money came from. This wasn't a family spat anymore. It was a felony. And I watched the ink dry on the security monitor as the trap locked shut. I straightened my blazer, grabbed the real bank records, and waited for the notary's stamp, the final click. Then I walked in with corporate security and Marcus, looking less like relatives and more like a hostile takeover. Victoria was live streaming, bragging about the house she didn't own yet and mocking me. The moment I entered, the room went cold. She sneered. Silas tried to throw me out until Marcus introduced me as the CEO and their lender. Silas went gray. Marion whispered in disbelief. I took the head of the table and told them I was revoking the loan. When Victoria screamed that the papers were signed, I slid the folder across the glass. The loan had an acceleration clause triggered by fraud. Inside were the real records, proof Silas had siphoned $85,000 from my insurance fund for years, using a power of attorney I signed as a teen. I told him I wasn't sick. And I had receipts tying his withdrawals to Victoria's new handbag lifestyle posts. Then I pointed to the gift letter he'd just signed, swearing to the government the down payment was clean personal savings. Stolen money. Laundered through an affidavit. Mortgage fraud. A federal felony. And as the lender, I was required to report it. Marion begged for time. I said I didn't have time, I had a solution. Marcus slid a new document over. A voluntary surrender agreement transferring their home deed and Victoria's Mercedes to me, as restitution. Sign it, and I walk away without filing the report. Don't. And the FBI gets it. Victoria sobbed, still live-streaming her own collapse. Silas, panicking, forced the pen through the paper and shoved the keys across the table. I pocketed them and gave one instruction. The house would be vacated by noon tomorrow. Locks changed. Nothing removed from the walls. Marion tried. We're family. I stopped at the door and said, family protects you. You robbed me. Behind me, Victoria smashed the crystal vase like a gavel, ending the case. Outside, they stumbled out with plastic bags and ruined faces. Silas tried to threaten a lawsuit. Marcus calmly warned him my retainer was $800 an hour. And I'd prepaid enough to keep him trapped in court for a decade plus, reopen the fraud case. Silas folded. A black town car arrived. I got in, opened my phone, and blocked Silas, Marion, and Victoria. As the signal dropped and the car pulled away, they shrank into nothing. 3 months later, my company expanded. My life leveled up. And I heard the aftermath. They were renting in a neighborhood they used to mock. Victoria was working retail and had vanished from social media. They take the bus now. I hope they remember exact change. And if you've ever treated someone like a priority, while they treated you like an option, tell me in the comments. I read every one.